Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Dojo Live, connecting once again with tech experts like you. My name is Kim Lantis, broadcasting live from Hermosillo, Sonora, and one of Nearsoft's many offices. Joining me today are my fellow co-hosts, Carlos Ponce in Mexico City. Hey,
Hey,
Carlos.
hello.
And Tulio Siragusa. Tulio, you're in LA today. Where are you?
I am. I'm in Los Angeles.
All right, he's our company nomad. He travels quite a bit. So today we're going to be talking about using agile development and the Azure cloud, more specifically with drone technology. Today's guest has more than 35 years of experience in technology, and he's of course here to tell us all about it. Please welcome David Host, the CEO of Airmap. Welcome to Dojo Live, David.
Thank you. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. I already told you this in our intro, but I love your backdrop in the building. I wish I was there with you.
Virtually, you're here virtually.
In spirit. So, David, to get us started, why don't you please tell us a bit more about yourself and your background and what it is that your team does at Airmap?
Sure. Well, I started out as a software developer in 1980, I think it was, and so got really quite early in this and did quite a bit in maps and what was big data at the time. And over time, I've done a number of other innovations that we'll talk through, but that were disruptive from a technology perspective. And here at Airmap, what we're doing is building the air traffic control for drones. At the end of the day, as drones are flying more and more, they've just grown like crazy. To get to the world that we can see on the movies where the drones are flying all over the place, delivering packages and people, you're going to need air traffic control for drones, and that's Airmap's mission.
That's really, really interesting, and thank you for clarifying that. I knew that it was in drone technology, and I was like, where the importance of that, and it's something that I hadn't personally thought of. I imagine that there's some cases where drones gone bad, right, and accidents and things that we need to avoid.
Oh, well, yeah, you hear stories about that. That happens. I mean, people are, vast majority of people are well-meaning. But this is an interesting industry because we're colliding the traditional aviation industry, which is an incredibly high safety record and is been very successful over the many years to make it safe for us to be in the skies, with, in effect, a consumer electronics business, right? So you can go buy a drone off of Amazon or wherever and bring it home and unpack it and take it out and start flying it, right? And so with this kind of clash of the two worlds it's fascinating, and I'll talk about that as we go forward.
Very good. I think that actually leads into my next question. So one of your taglines that you chose for today's talk was your solution will never work in our environment. And I was a bit like, it left me quite intrigued. Who is this you're speaking to, and what is this our environment?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't it work?
So particularly with Airmap, as the traditional aviation industry thinks about drones and integrating drones into the airspace, because they see drones as additional flying objects that need to be managed by the aviation world. They have a long history of building solutions, and those solutions are done a lot more like the way military systems are built, a lot of requirements definition, a lot of detailed testing, and long development cycles, typically. And and on the other hand, we've got these drones, and the drones are connected, in our case, to a cloud-based platform where we're using all kinds of modern tools like you would to build a very advanced website. And so we're in a situation where the people that are looking at this through the traditional aviation lens looks at the kinds of development that a company like Airmap does and says, there's just no way, this will never work. How do we get to the safety requirements and security requirements that we're used to when you're playing out over there on that cloud stuff?
Okay, so why don't you explain that to us? Like, let's talk about who are your consumers and customers where you're trying to break into and how it actually will be possible?
Yeah, I think so first we'll talk, at the end of the day, the people that are the traditional managers of the airspace are organizations like the FAA, and I'm not ascribing what I'm saying to the FAA in particular, but organizations like the FAA and their equivalents around the world, pretty much everywhere in the world, every country has someone that is responsible for managing the manned aircraft. And then also somebody that's responsible for setting the regulations of what's, how to create safe skies. So I'd say largely they and the organizations that supply them with the operating technologies that they use in an air traffic control system, for example, are the people that look at this new cloud world in a quizzical way.
So, Kim, if I could, I have a question. So who's the actual buyer of your platform? Who's your customer? Is it a consumer or is it those governing bodies?
Well, at the end of the day, the air traffic management system for drones is operated by whoever runs the airspace. So it would be people like like an FAA, that type of company. In fact, with the FAA, we are a authorized LANCE provider. LANCE is a service that stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. It's a system that the FAA rolled out to allow drones to fly close to airports if the pilot is trained, has what's called a Part 107 license, and if they certificate, and if they get approval because their mission is fits within the guidelines that are allowed. And in more simpler understanding, the FAA will allow they lock down a big distance around the airport for no traffic's allowed to go in there unless they get approval. And they're doing that because they want to protect the takeoffs and landing and the approaches of the aircraft. So they are responsible for approving any flights that occur there, including drone flights. And with the volume of drone flights that have been occurring around the world, growing and growing, they ended up with an issue where the air traffic controllers kept getting calls saying, hey, can I fly my drone over here? And it was a very difficult manual process. So the FAA put a system in place to allow for these automatic approvals. So if you're flying a few miles away, very low altitude, not close to the takeoff and landing areas, it should be approved. And we provide that service in conjunction with the FAA to the pilots that fly drones in those areas.
Interesting. So, as for, I'm not an expert on FAA, but I have heard that they haven't really updated much in many years. Is that something you're discovering in terms of adoption? I mean, how do you deal with very conservative environments in helping them adopt change?
Right, and that's So the FAA has a very complex operation to run, and I don't have personally much visibility into the rate of change there, but I've heard similar things around the long process for rolling out of technologies, and I think largely they're optimized towards safety. So I think so the opportunity here in the drone world and is to move it from to connect all these drones that are consumer electronics and are flying separately from any system today to this controlled air traffic manned aircraft system, and so it's a very interesting intersection of trying to say, well, how do you put things together? And the FAA's example that they did with the LANCE program is I think a thoughtful, actually quite speedy enhancement to the air traffic management system to try to do a step here. And And I'll talk about that here some more in a minute. Maybe the headline answer to your question is start small.
Okay.
Pick small examples. Do something, right? If you start with this view that, wow, the cloud-based systems will never be reliable enough or secure enough or have enough safety, they're not being built in the ways that we normally use to ensure that our systems are, inspectable, reliable, traceable requirements, certified, all of those traditional methods. You can stay at that high level of, wow, the cloud stuff will never get there. We can't ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can go take specific examples and say, well, wait a second, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What risk are we willing to take?
So some of these small wins then are your way to combat this potential worry about changing things too fast or introducing unforeseen risks into such an environment that needs control.
Right. Yeah.
So you're talking about these examples of these kind of like small wins. Do you have anything in particular that's like a good example of how that has taken hold and been successful?
Well, so earlier in my career, I did a project where we invented location on mobile phones, right? So that was a fun one.
Wait, that was you?
I take some credit for that. Yes.
See, now I don't know if I should love you or hate you because it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, a lot of people worked together, but I was there very early, and we had and that was another challenge, and the huge questions came about there. There wasn't so much technology, although there was like how accurate can you do it, and boy, the GPS signals isn't going to work everywhere, and but a large topic was around privacy. How do we it's creepy, as you say, or how do we ensure that people's privacy is protected, and who's legally liable, and there were a bunch of technical questions too. But it was interesting that a lot of the initial concerns were around this topic. And one way we got that started was that the first application that was at least rolled out in the United States was for 911, emergency 911. And the benefit of being able to provide someone's location in order to get the call to the right place so that the person could help them, because we need to know where they were located in order to get the call to the right place. That benefit outweighed the privacy concern, and that was that started, right. And then after that, you got to see these other models occur. Like on your iPhone, right? You see many times during your life, you'll say, "Oh yeah, allow that to have my location," right? So people opt into it. And is it perfect? No. Does it? But it's created a more understandable model for consumers, something the technologists could implement, and of course, as we know, has opened up many interesting things. That make our lives simpler.
Right, and eventually just becomes widely accepted, I guess.
Right, but that was a long journey, and I think there are other the technical versions of this that we did over time. There was a big question about in this 911 world, which was traditionally this where the call went was all in the telephone switch. Mm-hmm. And the telephone switch was another example of the detailed requirements, long development time frames, very expensive, hard to change, and yet when we talked about trying to use these modern, at the time, ways to route 911 calls outside of the telephone switch, we had very many of the same concerns, like that'll never happen, won't be reliable enough. Right. We can't change it. Lives are at stake, and those are good questions. Don't get me wrong; those are great questions. but the way through that, which ultimately led to systems that were much more modular, easier to deploy, better for the consumers, faster innovation, and very reliable, if not more reliable. Started with some, this using a term from the past, this kind of steel thread of let's go get something working, and then we'll see what it is, and we'll realize that it has strengths and weaknesses, and we'll focus on all the weaknesses until it gets good.
Mm-hmm. So what were some of those initial risks that you had to overcome with Airmap, or what's your next one? And let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, there's initially the question was more existential, like, why would you need an air traffic control system for drones? Why do you need that?
Why do you need an air traffic control system?
Some of them are the size of a.
Right. Well,
some of them are the size of a car.
Yeah.
For real?
Oh, there's all kinds of drones out there. I think the short answer is,
if a pigeon can down a 747, a drone could, I guess, right? So.
So certainly there's been when you have the intersection between the manned aircraft and these drone aircraft, it can be dangerous, right? You can have, and there's been a number of stories and reports of drones getting close to a helicopter, or hitting a helicopter, or hitting, or shutting down an airport because it flew in too close. So those are some of those stories, and I think at the end of the day, they all become it comes down to a bit about the model. So if you look at the historical model for manned aircraft, you have very highly trained pilots that go through hours and hours of certification to learn how to be in the airspace. You have incredibly highly trained air traffic controllers whose job it is to manage the sky and then the approaches as aircraft starts getting close to each other. So you have, in that case, a very collaborative, highly trained, manual but technology augmented solution, if that makes sense, to keeping the skies safe.
Yep.
In the world that we live today with drones, in the beginning, the drones mostly flew, in the parks, the kind of outgrowth of the hobbyist model aircraft people, right? And so in the beginning there, there was very little intersection between the two worlds, and there weren't that many of them. We now live in a world where we'll end the year with over 10 million drones in the world. And 2 years from now, there'll be over 25 million drones in the world. The vast majority of them are being purchased by enterprises for enterprise use, whether it's inspections or taking videos of real estate or even delivery of goods. And those are starting to fly in places besides the parks.
Right. So I guess it kind of comes down to, I hear you talking and it makes me think of, those horrible cases where there's that intersection, where all the neighbors and everybody's like, why isn't there a stop sign here? Or why isn't there a stoplight here? And then you just talk about it. And then only after some horrible accident happens, voila, there's a stop sign, voila, there's a stoplight. And so I guess the answer to the why air traffic control for drones is why not? We know that it's going to be a need, and let's prevent something before. That's what I feel like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is that in our world, the industry is already adopting this. We announced earlier this year that, for example, the country of Switzerland, their the airspace manager, which is called SkyGuide, is rolling out a system together with Airmap to do the things we've described, so that there's the ability for drones to operate much more freely in spaces that are currently restricted from them. and that they, when they do operate in those restricted areas, that they can have visibility into all the other drones that are operating in that area, as well as any manned traffic, as well as potential so special traffic like gliders or balloons or the other things that could all come in the airspace. And so there's an example of somewhere in the world, and we have a number of others. If you go to our website, of different places around the world that are realizing that the way to both protect the skies that exist today from all this vast amount of drones that are going to show up in the world, and then on the flip side, to get the economy going, or the drone economy of all of the positive uses of drones that will automate many manual unsafe practices today, like climbing on top of a roof to inspect it. Right? It's certainly safer to send a drone up there. So all of those positive impacts are going to be a direct byproduct of getting the drones into a air traffic control system for drones.
Hey, David, I have a question. There's the basically self-driving flying vehicles coming. I mean, that's the next thing, right? Is your platform planning to provide this technology for managing those as well? And,
yeah,
and how far are we from that? Because I'm hearing we're potentially just a couple of years away. I mean, there's some prototypes already out there. Will that be considered a drone, or is that going to be considered something else?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. In terms of drones that fly by themselves without somebody controlling them directly, that exists today, and they have to have special approvals in order to be able to fly in that way. But for example, I think earlier this week in North Carolina, one of our partners, Matternet, delivered blood samples between a hospital and a testing center, I believe, using one of these automated flying. Of course, there's observations and there's a bunch of safety cases, but fundamentally, it's delivering it on its own through our system and others. So some of that exists today. Now, when you move to the step that I think is the one you are alluding to, is like, when are the people going to be in there? And when are we going to have automated flying of helicopters, in effect, with people in them, which we all saw on the Jetsons when we were growing up?
It's coming.
Right? So the good news is everyone's working on that now. I mean, depending on the dates you're hearing, I'd say, it's in the 5 to 10 year time frame. But much earlier than that, you're going to see these kinds of systems, the flight vehicles, operate in the skies, electric helicopters with pilots and carrying people. That should happen in the next couple of years. We've seen examples of that now. But then again, that as that happens, and you're having many more, think of them as helicopters flying around the urban areas, it's going to be critical that the drones are in some kind of a system, so there's awareness. And if drones are not in a system, then how's the helicopter going to know that they're close to a drone?
Wow. Yeah. Carlos, is it time to show our own little drone here?
It is, Tulio, indeed. And well, for the record, this time, Tulio, you used to activate the former one version.
My chatbot's been fired. I get.
Yeah, totally, completely fired. No severance pay whatsoever.
It's done. Done.
Yeah. So now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be featuring our brand new chatbot, high tech. And I created a UX for this one, folks. So I want you to look closely, because this is going to be the first time ever on the air, right
it's
here.
Still Twitter. It's still integrated with Twitter, though, right?
Yeah, it is. It offers full Twitter integration. Arturo, are we ready for this? Ready to show you this? Okay. Okay, Arturo, I'm ready. Okay, cool. So here it is. Okay, here we go.
Oh, stop teasing us and show us already.
If you have any questions for, if you have any, this is our chatbot, okay? If you have any,
Oh,
this is high
man.
tech. I created the UX myself. If you have any questions for David, make sure you send them right here on Twitter. Right here, you can see that very clearly on screen. Send them on Twitter, guys, and we'll just read them back to David right here while we're live on the air.
I just realized it's a one-arm bot.
Yeah, it is a one-arm, and it's supposed to go on. Like, you know, if you turn it around or it does something, I don't know. Maybe this is, you know, one of those glitches or bugs, as they call them.
I think J.J. Abrams is totally jealous of that robot right now.
Most likely. I don't know why, but it's not lighting. His eyes are not lighting. But anyway, if you have any questions for Twitter, for David, I'm sorry, send them on Twitter right here, as our chatbot says.
Awesome.
Now it's time to deactivate. Hold on one second. Let me just pull the plug here. And here it is.
Oh, man.
Okay, so now we're ready to go back to David and learn more about Airmap in detail. Back to you guys.
Just one question. Hopefully, we'll get some additional more from the audience. David, it sounds like you've had to be in several situations where disruptions took place, and education, and obviously the challenges of adoption and managing risks and all those things. What would you say keeps you up now? What's sort of like your biggest challenge now, and your next leapfrog moment? You know, that for Airmap.
Oh,
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I think it's this. I got a whole bunch of challenges. I wonder which one gets to get to the biggest one today. But look at it's a lot about education and awareness, and it comes back to this point that that's sort of the title of the talk, which is how do we merge these two worlds, right? We have on the one hand all these consumer electronics drones, that are used for all kinds of purposes, and it's growing and growing and growing. And Airmap has a great system, a lot of drones connected to us, developers using our platform to find out whether they can, what the airspace is and if they can fly or not, and to get manned traffic so they know where they're close to. And we have a lot of capabilities for developers, and quite a few developers. It's growing all the time. And then we have, of course, these conversations with the customers and on the air traffic side, and so the biggest challenge we have in our business is this is happening all over the world very quickly. The avalanche of drones coming through, the growth of drones, it's just significant, right? There's many, many more drones in the world than there are traditional aircraft. And yes, they are small and they fly in a usually low altitude, but the volume of those growing is just creating this demand all around the world around what are we going to do? How do we get this to work together? How do we avoid the traffic accident at the place where we thought we needed to have the stoplight, right? And what are the steps to take it there? And because this is an evolution, right? At some point, the vision of the aviation industry is that there'll be a common single sky that has anything flying in it, from zero to, the satellites, in a common system that's coordinated, right? That's the vision. So we know where we're going, and the question is, the biggest challenge every day is just what are the steps? How do we create these examples that can then be built upon?
So that's, excuse me, that's Airmap's vision, or that's the industry's vision?
It's the industry's vision, and we share that vision. I mean, we're focused very much on the drone component, but we live in a world where every day there's more flights on the manned aircraft side, right? You're all flying around all the time. The whole world's flying around. In China, people are flying like crazy. The amount of traffic that shows up in the existing system is growing and growing and growing, and to some extent, in many parts of the world, limited by the manual requirements to keep track of all of this. right? You're running out of people, and there have been incredibly clever, and there's been a lot of augmentation through automation of the manual processes. But I think the vision of the industry is that somehow this moves to a lot more automation. Obviously, we'll still need people. We will, these not a lot of oversight, but thinking through how automation occurs, how that's ingested into the overall system is an important topic. And to some degree, what we're doing over on the drone side, where we're managing lots of drones with hardly any people, is very interesting to this whole world.
So how do you think that intelligence is going to be solved? Are there investments being made on using AI or some other algorithms? What are they thinking there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very excited about the fact that we run on the Azure cloud. All of the drones that are connected to our system flow through the Azure cloud. The real-time information that we get around temporary flight restrictions or changes in weather or where the manned aircraft is, where drones are flying, all of that is flowing through this cloud-based system. And so now that you can imagine applying the cool tools, the AI-based tools that exist in the cloud to that set of information and starting to train models that can, in the beginning, inform humans and help them, assist them on things they may not have been able to visualize or determine on their own because so much data is flowing through. And then over time, as we've seen across a variety of other industries, these models will get trained so that they can start taking over the menial tasks and freeing up the humans for that the models can't be trained to do yet. So that's an evolution, right? And it starts with getting all the data flowing through the system and then starting to apply and train these models. And I'm quite optimistic that it's going to get better and better. It will help with the automated augmentation of manual processes in the beginning, but then the sky's the limit.
Great. Well, I got a million more questions. This is how these things go. It just, but we're out of time.
There you go.
That's like just when it starts to get really interesting and we can dig in a little more. We're out of time. Carlos, is there anything left? Anybody pending burning question? Otherwise, I'm going to pass it back to Kim to wrap it up. Absolutely.
Actually, yes. Well, we got here internally. This is a question coming from one of our teammates in Hermosillo. Hold on one second. Let me just see if we can do it here or it's going to be on Twitter because she's asking me. Okay. Yeah, we got a question from internally from Dora Cortázar. Actually, she's part of our recruiting team. And she says, can you tell us a little bit about your company culture and what are your guiding principles?
The fail fast. That's our fundamental mission, which is we want to do a lot quickly and then learn from it. So the culture is one of almost the opposite of the safety. I'm not trying to say that we're not very, very safe because we do tremendous amount of things to be safe. We have a kind of an overlay to ensure that that's the case.
It's just a juxtaposition.
Right, but our view is that hey, let's go try things, learn, adjust, keep trying. And that's, I think, the key pillar to our company culture.
Does that kind of tie into your title then, how the agile development element comes in with the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're trying to play on that strength. The innovation that exists on the cloud is stupendous, and I think that particularly with your audience. Once people get a chance to kind of hook into, a system that's open with standard APIs and then innovate around that, wonderful things will happen, right? A lot of things that aren't so wonderful will happen too, but those go away, and the wonderful things do kind of rise to the top. And so I'm excited that our kind of API-driven, try things and fail fast approach will continue to show just things that people thought were impossible.
Very good. I was going to actually ask you my closing question based off of so much experience you have, not only as a CEO but a founder, an investor, an advisor, all of these things. If you had any final words of wisdom for us, but it seems like to me that you already shared those.
There you go.
And a developer. Started out as a developer.
Yes.
Words of wisdom would be awesome. We have 300 developers, so we certainly, probably some of us would like to learn how to get to where you got to. Right?
Yeah, go back to your roots, the 1980s, the developer side of you. What's your words of wisdom?
I have to say I loved developing. It was when I started out, there were hardly any tools, so we had to build the tools along with building all the software. But at the end of the day, I have one very simple guiding principle, which is I'm a curious guy, and so I would do something, and then after a while realize that I'd like to not do that anymore because I want to do something else. So I try to find someone to do that job, and then so I go do the next one. And so that's my simple advice: go work yourself out of a job, and then go do the next one.
Yes, very good. I like that. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
David Hoves, everyone from Airmap. David, if anyone wishes to reach out to you or find out more, where might they do so?
The easiest way is david.hose@airmap.com. Feel free, send me a note.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. And with no final ado, that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see you up again next Dojo Live, scheduled for when, Carlos?
That's exactly going to happen. Actually, next week is going to be a busy week because we have the Focusrite events, and we're framing a whole bunch of travel tech related interviews during the course of the week, which is kind of a special occasion. And for next week, we're going to have, let's see, we're going to be speaking with Byron Rees, the author and futurist and publisher of Gigaome. Okay,
David, you got to tune into that. It's the guy who wrote the book about the fourth wave of robotics. I think you'll love it. It's a Gigaome.
Yeah, actually, it's called the next interview. It's about the topic on exploring the fourth age: smart robots, conscious computers, and the future of humanity. That's the topic that Byron has chosen for next week. So I encourage everyone watching this show right now to join us. Exactly. Let's see when that's going to happen. That's going to be happening on November the 12th, which I think it's next Monday. So remember that, guys. Byron Rees, author, publisher, futurist. Next week at the same time, 1 p.m. Pacific, 3 Central. That's
Carlos, you forgot one thing.
What?
What's happening the week of the 26th when we're all in Hermosillo?
Oh, we're going to be, well, besides also having a whole bunch of interviews, we're going to be celebrating our 150th interview on that day. A little bit over 3 years of interviews. We're going to be celebrating our 150 hours and of great interviews with great guests like you. So stay tuned for that.
Which coincides with Nearsoft's team building week.
I know, we're all going to be in the same room. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, exactly. And we're also, this is another interesting aspect, is that we're going to be interviewing a guest, but not remotely. He's going to be physically present at Nearsoft.
I think we've only ever done that once before with Yossi Ginsburg, right?
We did that with Yossi Ginsburg, exactly. So this one is going to be with Basil Alatal, CEO of TripHop. So stay tuned for that, folks. That's going to be on November the 26th.
Perfect. Well, with that, no further ado, thank you once again, David, Airmap, for your time today, and I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.